Welcome everyone to Monday Match Analysis. I'm Gill Gross. On today's show, we are picking each and every men's quarterfinal at the 2025 Australian Open. We've got a great 4 matches to get through. I normally go in chronological order, reverse of when the matches are being played, but I'm not going to do that to everybody. I'm not going to make you wait for the blockbuster, the A-lister, the headliner, which is Alcaraz versus Djokovic. So we will start with that. Then we'll hit Sinner Minaur. Then we'll go to Shelton Sonego, and then we'll do Zverev versus Paul, which is the first of the 4 quarterfinals to be played. Hopefully, you're able to get to this preview before that one starts, but if not, that is why it's at the end. The way I normally do this, I go through kind of the player's form, then we go to the head-to-head, then I'll talk about keys for both, and then I'll hit a prediction. That's the general format, just so you have an idea of what is coming. And I think that's all for preamble. So let's hit it. Djokovic versus Alcaraz. Alcaraz has taken out Shevchenko, Nishioka, Borges, Draper. I have been pretty impressed with how seamlessly Alcaraz has sort of found his form early on, considering he didn't play any warm-ups. He's got a very new serve. He's got a significantly tweaked backhand. He added 5 extra grams to his racket. He is looking, very, very physically fit, which has been a positive just right off the bat. But yeah, it's been clean. It's been drama-free. Have there been short patches of erratic play from Alcaraz, normally a just product of how he plays? Yes, absolutely. In the Borges match, a little bit in the first set against Draper, he was kind of fortunate that Jack, who obviously, if you're looking at all of his opponents, is the one guy who on paper would be threatening, was pretty depleted physically from playing all the 5-setters in the lead up to that one. So I don't think Alcaraz has faced a really stiff test yet. As for Djokovic, Bassa Veretti, Faria, those were a couple of 4-setters. And then Machac and Lehechka, those 2 matches were wrapped up by Novak in straights. The physicality hasn't looked indestructible. There were moments against Nishesh. There were moments against Machac where it seemed like the physical toll, Djokovic was kind of wearing that in his body language, and was breathing really heavy in between points, and maybe had lost a half a step at moments in that match. But I think there are way more significant positives in what we've seen from Djokovic. The main thing that has stood out is his mental. He has been intense, really, really intense, and I think that's what you want to see. If you're a Novak Djokovic fan, that he's just really engaged and he's playing with a lot of emotion. And honestly, it's looked a lot of the time like he's been playing with the chip on his shoulder. Really good serving. And I'll say for the matchups against the Czechs, Machac against Lehechka, the guy seemed a little bit overwhelmed by the occasion, both of them. But Novak has been mega consistent off the ground. Really, really clean. Head-to-head, Djokovic-Alcaraz. It's 4-3 Novak. Last year's meetings were both obviously massive matches. A Wimbledon final, an Olympic gold medal match. Alcaraz won at Wimbledon, blowout fashion. Novak was coming off of the knee injury that he suffered at Roland Garros and wasn't moving at 100%, but he was in the Wimbledon final. So he was playing good enough tennis to make the Wimbledon final, and Alcaraz beat him in straight sets. But then a few weeks later, Djokovic at the tournament that was his number 1 priority in 2024, he beat Carlos in 2 tie-break sets. Just one of the most remarkable performances you'll see. So I guess I want to start. I have more to say about the head-to-head. Of the 7 matches, they've only played once on outdoor hardcourt. That was the epic they played in Cincinnati, which was one of the most dramatic 3-set matches that you'll see in terms of twists and turns, where Alcaraz was up a set and a break, was looking like a wrap. Carlos let him in. And And, then they played a fantastic third set. It went to a tiebreak. Alcaraz had a little hand cramp at the end there. Novak won. At the majors, Alcaraz has won the last two. After Novak won the first one at Roland Garros when Carlos had the cramping, the real big serious cramping issue when they first played at Roland Garros. So it's 2-1 Alcaraz in best of 5, but he's beaten Novak the last 2 times they've played at the majors. Novak has the only outdoor hard court meeting going his way in a match where there was almost no separation between the two. So that's what I want to say about the head-to-head. But I think what is obviously most relevant is the last match they played when Novak Djokovic won on a clay court. And by the way, you could almost say like it would be easier for Novak to copy paste what he did in that match onto a hard court, just given how that match went down. And I guess what I think Alcaraz needs to reverse from the Olympics, and what Novak obviously hopes stays the same, but Alcaraz needs to change this, is he needs to get in more return points. Like Djokovic's serve +1 dominated in that match at the Olympics, where oftentimes Novak just was never really allowing Alcaraz to get to neutral in the first place on these return points. And it's really when the points get to neutral and both players are in the back of the court, that's where Alcaraz's explosiveness shines. When I say explosiveness, I'm talking about his power. I'm talking about his movement. And in a lot of ways, I'm also talking about his creativity and his versatility. But what we were seeing at that match in the Olympics was just Novak's first serve and first forehand just never allow Alcaraz to get comfortable and never really let him in points. In particular, slice serve into Alcaraz's forehand. Carlos needs to solve that return. That's the one that has kind of given him fits. Novak hits that serve really, really well, but I don't want to run through all the details of all the things that Carlos can try, especially because I'm not really positive. But I think when he and Juan Carlos Ferrero go to the lab and try to say, okay, how are we preparing for this match? I think just a plan for how you want to approach that particular return needs to be a big part of it, given what happened the last time. I also think Alcaraz needs to be disciplined enough to keep the error count at least somewhat close, somewhat competitive. Now, I don't think there's a world in which Alcaraz makes fewer unforced errors than Djokovic, and I don't think he should. But I do think that Alcaraz needs to respect Novak's depth. Like when Djokovic hits a deep return or a high-quality forehand cross-court, I think there needs to be a recognition of, okay, we're not attacking this ball. We're going to trade this ball. We're going to we're going to trust our legs and make sure we play high percentage off of this ball. In attacking situations, Alcaraz, I think, needs to trust his 85% pace to do the job. There were misses, especially early on in Paris. And it's something we see often from Alcaraz, where he's so juiced up and so fired up that we're hitting the 100 mile per hour forehand, where you really only needed the 85 mile per hour forehand to get the job done. So I think that's a level of discipline, a level of kind of staying calm and trying to build points more patiently. And on the backhand, and I've really liked Alcaraz's new look backhand. If I'm Carlos, I'm focused on the variety and I'm going cross court a lot. I'm not trying to get into a situation with Novak where I'm just kind of exchanging drive backhands cross court and then trying to be aggressive with my change down the line. Novak's better at that game. He'll win that. He'll win that particular sort of kind of exchange. So I would look to slice. I would look to shaping the ball more, and I'd keep it in the cross court, use a lot of variety, and look for the runaround forehand if I'm Alcaraz. As for Djokovic, the path at the Olympics will remain the path here, which is to outserve and outsolid. So at the Olympics, unreturned serves, and remember, this was a close match at the Olympics. The margins were tight. It was two tie breaks. Unreturned serve percentage, first and second, was Djokovic 30%, Alcaraz 23%. So in such a close match, he just got more of those one-and-done points in his favor. Unforced errors were 27-16. Unofficially, that's my scoring, but I had 27 unforced errors Alcaraz, 16 unforced errors Djokovic. So again, those are the numbers that need to hold firm for Novak if he's going to win this match. Out serve and out solid. The argument for Carlos is that Novak defensively doesn't have the speed to keep up anymore. Djokovic didn't break Alcaraz at the Olympics. He never broke serve. It looked like whenever Carlos had a chance to take an aggressive cut at the ball, the power, the touch, the net rushing threat, Novak couldn't really scramble against it. It obviously looked that way at Wimbledon, but you can kind of throw that one out a little bit more. But I mean, just watching Novak, I think he's still defending very well. But when you're facing the guy who has maybe not the most, like, you might say Sinner is the most consistent clinical attacker in the game, but Alcaraz is the most overwhelming attacker in the game and the most deadly attacker in the game. I don't know that Novak's speed stands up to that anymore. And that is really where Alcaraz, at his best, I think separates. Once the points develop, once they get athletic, Alcaraz is just too fast and too powerful. And that's what I think it needs to come down to at this point for Carlos. And he can unlock those advantages with good returning and, you know, good discipline to allow things to get physical, and to be able to pick his spots and work points in a way where he's able to do it with consistency. He's able to get his offense off with consistency and not allow Djokovic to really run away with an advantage in the error count. All right, my prediction. I think Djokovic will take an early lead in the match. This is Alcaraz's first night match. The conditions might feel a bit different. And I think all in all, it's more likely that before Alcaraz finds his range, it's Novak taking advantage of that portion of the match. But I do think the longer the match goes on, the better Alcaraz will get. So I'm going to pick Alcaraz in 5. And again, I just have a weird feeling that it's an early lead for Djokovic and it's a comeback late for Alcaraz. I don't think the courts are playing as quick as Djokovic would like, especially in nighttime conditions, but mainly because of these balls. I think that is an advantage for Alcaraz, who I think, as always, is going to throw the kitchen sink at Djokovic from attacking positions. There's going to be net rushing and drop shotting and A++ power that kind of keeps Djokovic's defense out of it, which I think he's kind of needed. Now, could he replicate the performance at the Olympics and, you know, not really have to defend much because he's just so clinical with the serve and the forehand? Look, I think to say that over 5 sets he's going to serve, and this is what he did at the Olympics, 74% first serves in, pinpoint accuracy, and just red hot on the forehand where he's just redlining pace and like at will and not missing. I don't know that is going to be replicated. I wouldn't really back it to be replicated. But I do think Djokovic is playing well. I think it's going to be a really good match. So, Alcaraz in 5. Before we go to the next one, I want to tell you about Coachlife.com. I love Coachlife.com because it makes me smarter as an analyst, as a commentator, as a player, as a coach when I'm doing a little bit of coaching here in Tucson, Arizona with some juniors. It is a great knowledge source for all of these things where I can kind of feed my brain as a tennis lover. Coachlife.com is a video platform where the coaches that developed so many of the best players that we've seen in our game and so many great pros from Swiatek, Goff, Tiafoe, Kyrgios, Fritz, Sampras, Draper, Sharapova, Pegula, Paul, Roddick, Davenport. These coaches who developed those players share their secrets, their philosophies on training, techniques, tactics, mental approaches, and everything else. It started with 19 incredible coaches. Now it's grown to 25 with, amazing new content and coaches being added regularly. And right now is an exciting time to get on board. Why? Because, for one, Novak Djokovic's junior coach is being added to the platform next month. And also, 40% off. This is the final week of the January sale. So don't miss your chance to take advantage of this incredible deal. Click on the link in the description, coachlife.com, the ultimate resource for players and families and coaches who love tennis. Let us now go to Shelton versus Sonego. Shelton has taken out Nakashima, Carreño Busta, Musetti, and Monfils. He has been broken only 4 times in 14 sets played against those returners, which is impressive. I mean, Nakashima isn't a return guy, but PCB is, and Musetti is, and Monfils is. So Ben has been awesome, and he brings kind of a different level of focus and intensity to slams. He never fears a big moment. And here he is again in another Australian Open quarterfinal. It's the second of his career. For Sonego, it is the first major quarterfinal of his career. He has defeated Stan Wawrinka, hit the shot of the tournament in that match. He beat Joao Fonseca. He beat Fabian Marozsan and Lerner Tien. He's got an underrated resume, 4 titles on 4 different surfaces. He's been just outside the top 20, but, so he's always been a guy who can get hot and win a title week to week on the ATP Tour. And this is now the first time that he's kind of had one of those weeks at a slam. Obviously, he's also had some draw opportunity. And let me put it this way. After Stan, who, from a win-loss standpoint in 2024, wasn't a very good tour-level player, Stan Wawrinka. After that, he played somebody making his second-round debut. Then he played someone making their major third-round debut. And then he played someone making their major fourth-round debut. Only one top 100 player, which is Marozsan, if you want to look at it that way. Head-to-head, Shelton versus Sonego. This is actually an interesting one. It's 1 apiece. The first time they played was 2022 Cincinnati. This is when Ben was still enrolled in college at the University of Florida, and this was Ben's first top 100 win. This was the match where Shelton realized, oh, I should probably go pro. I'm probably good enough to go pro if I can beat Lorenzo Sonego. That was that match. Then the next match, he beat Casper Ruud, who was in the top 5, I believe. Definitely the top 10 at the very least. And that sealed it for Shelton. He was like, okay, we're going to go pro. The second time they played was a little less than 1 year later, 2023 Roland Garros. This was a 4-set win for Sonego. And the context around that one is that Ben couldn't beat anybody around this time. Ben wasn't winning any matches over this period in time, especially on the clay. So that's what I'll say about the head-to-head. Ultimately, I'll keep this short and sweet. I think Ben is going to eat up Sonego's backhand. It is one of the least consistent backhands on tour, and he does a really good job hiding it with runarounds. He's got great runaround footwork, but that's just so much harder to do against lefties, where you're dealing with way more pace coming into your ad side when you're playing a lefty with the big forehand. There's less time to run around. There's nowhere to hide on the return of serve, where Shelton will swing it to Sonego's backhand and force him to try to find good backhand returns, which I also think is going to be a problem. And I mean, the one thing is, like, Shelton needs to keep him honest, because Sonego's backhand is at its best when he can kind of cut off the angle and take it early on the rise. And if Sonego is really crowding the baseline and sort of sitting on that, Shelton definitely needs to focus on burning him to the other side of the court. But I just don't know that that Lorenzo's backhand is going to be able to really hang. And as far as the return goes, that's another interesting thing to look at. Sometimes Sonego can have trouble on the return. He hasn't really faced a server. We haven't really seen that. The biggest server he's played is Fonseca. Tien, Marajan, Stan. Yeah, I think the biggest server he's faced is Fonseca. So this is going to be a very different test for him. It won't be easy for Ben to break against that serve +1, but also if the margins are tight and if it's going to be sort of a lot of holds and some tie breaks, I always trust Ben to fight through the nerves really, really well and kind of come through in those big moments with the kind of daring tennis that we've seen over and over again under pressure at majors. So prediction, I've got Ben in 3. If you look at the long-term track record or even just this tournament, I think Ben has just proven a little bit more than Sonego, who I respect a lot as a player. I think he might take a set, but again, my prediction, Ben in 3, is because I'm not really considering picking Sonego. It's a pretty clear nod for Shelton for me. All right, let's go to Sinner versus de Minaur. Jannik Sinner has beaten Nicolas Jarry, Tristan Schoolkate, Marcos Giron, Holger Rune. He is now on an 18-match win streak. He hasn't lost a lot of sets on that 18-match win streak either. And this was a smooth Aussie Open run until the Rune match, where he was clearly weakened. He played a really bad second set. He struggled through the beginning of the third set. He just didn't look right physically. And then, revealed after, obviously had a medical timeout midway through the match, and obviously revealed afterwards that he didn't warm up for the match, that he was not feeling well as soon as he woke up that morning. So now that's become the main concern for Jannik Sinner. For de Minaur, Van de Zandschulp in the first round, Tristan Boyer second round, Cerundolo in the third round, and then Mickelson in his fourth round. The scare was the Cerundolo match, where de Minaur was kind of hanging on by a thread throughout the second set after losing the first set, almost went down 2-0, but fought through it and won that 1 in 4. He's been moving around the court like a mosquito. Like he looks even bigger and stronger than he did last year. He is healthy again. He is just lightning fast around the court again, like we are used to seeing from de Minaur. The head-to-head here is a big deal. It's a big talking point. It's 9-0 Sinner. The last 7 has been straight sets for Sinner. Demon has only won 1 set in this head-to-head, and that was a tiebreak. So it doesn't really get much more lopsided than that. And I think if you look at Alex, yes, he's gotten a lot better recently. He's become a better player, as has Sinner. But de Minaur is really good at changing up his game. He'll try playing safe. He'll try playing more aggressive. He's not somebody who's just going to play the same way every time if he keeps losing. So I think one of the things that you're concerned about, if you see how this has played out for de Minaur, is he's experimented and tried a lot of different stuff, and nothing has worked. So de Minaur, and he isn't unique in this problem, but I think what it really comes down to, and this is never good news when you're previewing a match when you can say this, but it becomes a matter of finding any area where Alex can exploit as an advantage. What part of the game, what scenario, tactical scenario or technical scenario exists in which de Minaur is having success in getting the better of Jannik Sinner? And it's hard for me to pick that. Now, I also think that there will be a plan for de Minaur, which is that he should come out and see what Jannik's legs are made of early. The first thing is don't overplay. and see what Sinner is made of early with this kind of illness storyline looming in the background. I think that's going to give de Minaur a little bit of extra belief and some focus, just like, okay, let's hang in here really tough and see if we have a physical advantage on this day. And it's possible de Minaur might have one, and that would change everything. I also think just emotionally, this is the Australian Open. This is Alex de Minaur's first Australian Open quarterfinal. He needs to use that, play with a ton of emotion, get the crowd on his side, and really use the energy of this match to his advantage, which I do think he'll do. I think we'll see a more fiery version of de Minaur and someone who's trying to ride the wave of the significance of the occasion and the crowd. It's going to be interesting to see how much that can tip the scales in a head-to-head that's been so lopsided. But ultimately, my prediction is Sinner in 4. I think de Minaur is going to be a fireball. I think he is going to take a set. You do have the uncertainty with Sinner's health looming in the background, but I just can't ignore how dominant this has been in favor of Sinner. And the fact that Jannik has 2 days and it wasn't a physical injury, so I feel just somewhat optimistic that it's something that just happened in passing and that it's not going to linger or prevent him from playing his best tennis. Lastly, we've got Zverev versus Paul. I think this might be a sleeper pick for the best quarterfinal of the bunch. Now, I obviously think Djokovic and Alcaraz will be, but I think if we're going to be surprised and one of these matches is going to be way better than we expect, I think it might be this one. Paul, O'Connell, Nishikori, Carreño Busta, no, not Carreño Busta, Carballes Baena, and Davidovich Fokina. In his first round match, he went 7-5 in the fifth with Chris O'Connell. And since then he dropped the first set against Kei Nishikori. Since then, he's been on fire on a 9-set win streak. Many of those sets have been lopsided. And he has not, started with the 5-setter. He has really not exerted all that much energy in his last few matches. So Tommy Paul, full battery charge coming into this quarterfinal. And mentally, he's in the top 10. So I think that was really weighing on him the week before the tournament. If you watched Tommy play in Adelaide, was it Adelaide? Yeah, it was Adelaide. If you watched him play in Adelaide, he just looked tight. He didn't look very good. And I think it was because of the top 10 thing. Now that's behind him. It's out of his head. He does not need to think about that at all. He's already been in an Australian Open semifinal as well, which I think might give him a bit of a boost mentally. Zverev has taken out Puig, Martinez, Fernley, and Humbert. He's only lost one set. And Humbert started cranking returns. That was a crazy redlining set by the Frenchman. I think Zverev even mentioned that in his press conference. He's like, I'm playing well because the one set I lost, I couldn't have done anything about it, which is true. So, look, Sasha, it's been really impressive, especially considering he had a bicep injury, didn't play at the United Cup, didn't really prepare for this event like he wanted to, but you wouldn't be able to tell based on how he's playing. The head-to-head is interesting. It's 2-0 Tommy Paul, obviously the far lower-ranked player in both of their meetings, especially because they were a long time ago. Acapulco 2020 and Indian Wells 2022, which was a match that went to a third-set tiebreak. So both of those are slow, hard courts. This one might be a little quicker, but arguably it's still, just a medium-pace hard court after the balls get a couple of games old. The one tactical commonality that I think you can look towards in the 2 times they've played is Tommy Paul has abused Alexander Zverev's second serve. And clearly it was, I'm going to stand inside the baseline and be super offensively threatening on my second return because I don't think this second serve is good enough to keep me at bay. And it wasn't. But I think it's very relevant that those two meetings were a long time ago. Like 2020 and 2022, I don't know. I just think a lot has changed since then with both guys. That said, I'll start with Tommy here. He has the two attributes that I think are a must if you're going to beat Zverev, which is the return and the fitness. You have to handle the serve pace. You know that Zverev is going to serve around 70% at around 130 miles per hour. So you have to have the return skill to be able to deal with that. And you have to have the shot tolerance, especially at a major. Zverev is going to test your ability to play long rallies and your ability to stay consistent from the back of the court. He's going to challenge that for as long as it takes, for 5 straight hours if it's necessary. It is consistency and endurance at the highest level for Alexander Zverev. And you just know that Tommy, at least from a physical standpoint, is not intimidated by that. So he's got those quick hands, good forehand block return, which I think he'll use, good backhand drive return, which stays so compact, and elite fitness. These are things you need to hang in there with Zverev. So I'm not surprised that inherently we do have a head-to-head that favors Paul a little bit more than you would think. On the other hand, I think Zverev has plugged the holes that Tommy Paul has taken advantage of. You can't bully Zverev's second serve anymore. You used to be able to come into a match against Zverev, and I think a lot of coaches would tell their players, I want you to stand inside the baseline and crush the second serve. And that's just, I don't know that you can tell your player that anymore. With the consistent pace that Zverev now brings on the second serve and the fact that he's not even double fault prone as he does it. And then the other thing is just getting it to Zverev's forehand, waiting for that short cross court, and then getting to the net. It's another thing that I think Tommy did at Indian Wells, where he was actually really aggressive with his forehand, and he was coming in a lot. But I think the path was through Zverev's forehand. And now, forehand to forehand, I used to think, okay, maybe Tommy can get into that exchange and kind of try to get the better of that. I take Zverev's forehand now over Tommy's somewhat solidly, especially if, it's a major quarterfinal and it's not a final. So what's Paul going to do this time? And is he going to be able to find those holes? I don't exactly think so. I'm predicting Zverev in 5. I think it's going to be a very good match. I think we're going to see a lot of good returning, a lot of baseline rallies. I back Zverev's ball striking, and that's what this comes down to. He hits a little bit bigger off of both wings. He's a little bit more consistent off of both wings. And I'm not just saying that. That's data. That's numbers. And I looked at him. Zverev averages 3 miles per hour faster on the forehand. He averages 5 miles per hour faster on the backhand. And in consistency, I won't do percentage because percentage doesn't mean anything to anybody. But I'll tell you on the leaderboards. Forehand consistency. Zverev 27th, Paul 86th. Backhand consistency. Zverev 19th, Paul 60th. So I'm not kidding when I say off of both wings, Zverev hits bigger and misses less. Zverev wants this to be uncreative. He wants to be running side to side, trading ground strokes. And I think there's going to be enough of that for him to win. If Paul really does a great job of tapping into the variety, and finding his way to the net often, I think that's his best chance, but I don't think he'll quite be able to do it. So Zverev in 5 is my pick there. Enjoy the matches, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this preview. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.